Hi, it's Alex from Learn to Code London here, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through Module 3 of my How to Create Your Own Website tutorial. You can find this tutorial on my website if you go to learntocodelondon.co.uk, and if you there's a wealth of information on my site. If you scroll down to the bottom and find free online learning tutorials and click through to that will take you through to the how to make your own website tutorial. So this video is really to supplement this blog post here, which is module 3, and it's all about taking you through the key HTML tags that we must learn if we want to program in HTML and create our very own website. So we're going to be building on what we covered in module 2, which was the very basic hello world page, getting us up and running. So I'm literally going to step through this tutorial and introduce you to all the tags and demonstrate how they work. Before I do that, if we just go back to part 2 and very quickly grab the hello world example which we went through in the last video. So I'm literally just going to copy and paste that into my text editor. So I've got my HTML code ready. I've got a very basic structure. So if I save that to my desktop, I'm going to call it index.html. Save, and it has appeared here. Now I'll just go back to that tutorial page, module 3, so I know exactly what I need to cover. I'll use that as my guide today. So firstly, I'm just going to open up that page. So that's the code running, and that's the browser showing that web page back to me. So I've got my very simple kind of development environment set up, so ready to go. So the first bit I'm just going to talk about very briefly is HTML tags. So HTML is made up of tags. That's why it's called a kind of markup language. The tags mark up the content that we want to display in our web page. And that's really all there is to HTML. It's a very simple language. It's very natural to pick up. And that's the basic format. So the basic format is you have this tag, for example, this tag title. You open the tag by surrounding it in these kind of triangular brackets, and then you close the tag by doing exactly the same thing, except for you have this slash here. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Oops. There we go. That should hopefully allow you to see what I'm doing a bit better. So that's HTML tags. Read this as start of the HTML tag. This is the actual content of the HTML tag, and this is the end of the HTML tag. The other thing that HTML tags can have are attributes. And attributes are basically name and value pairs that are defined within the tag. So for example, take this h1 tag hello world. If I want to have an attribute in here called ID equals title, which is very useful for styling, but we're not going to cover that in this particular module. That's essentially how I would define an attribute for that HTML tag. And then I might have another tag, whatever it may be, whatever. So that's the very basic format of tags and attributes in HTML. So if I just go back to what I had before. So let's have a look at some key examples. Let's go through the link tag, and this is also called an anchor tag. The way this works is you basically, this is the format. So you've got the anchor tag is called A being short for anchor, and it has this href attribute, which is actually the address, the URL to the page which we will browse to if that anchor or that link, that hyperlink is clicked. I'm sorry. So that's the basic format. So let's go back to my editor and create an anchor tag. this is how you would go about that. So you'd start A, and again, I'm using Sublime and it's doing auto completion for me, which is great. So href, hyperlink reference, okay. Open my quotes, and then I'm going to link to my website here. So I'll just copy and paste that. So just save and typing it in. Let me just make this a bit wider so we can see everything on one line and make life a little bit easier. So there we go. So I've opened my anchor, I've got my attribute. Now I need to close my anchor tag. And then this is the content, so that's the address that we will go to when the link is clicked. And I'm just going to put click here, and I'm going to close my anchor tag. So if I click, if I save that using Command S, it will go to my index HTML file. If I reload this, then you can see here, I've got click here, hyperlink, which if I click on it, obviously we'll go to that page. It will go back, it will take me back. So that's pretty obvious. We can also have additional attributes within the anchor tag. So for example, another very useful one is called target. If I want to, for example, open the link in a new window, then I would simply say target equals open the quotes underscore blank. Again, if I save that and reload the page, it looks exactly the same. However, when I click on it, it's opened in a new tab and my old tab is there. So that's a very basic introduction on how to create hyperlinks within HTML. Okay, so the next one is the image tag. So let's build on this. So again, the image tag is very similar. It's denoted in HTML as img, and you have a source attribute which references the file, the image file that we want to display, and we've got another two attributes called title and alt. So title will be displayed when we hover over that image, and alt is basically means alternative. If, for example, the web browser is unable to load the image for whatever reason, the alternative text will be displayed. So let's add that to our web page. So we type img source equals, I think I'm just going to use this image that I've got on my desktop. That should do it. So get the file name. I'm just going to put title equals LTCL, alt equals LTCL, close the tag, save. Save that, refresh, and I've got my huge image displayed inside my web page. Okay, and when I hover over it, you can see very faintly there LTCL is there. I can control the size of it by using width and height attributes. So if I make that 200 pixels, and then save that and refresh, then my image has been resized. Note that it's been put in line here. I can break this up very easily by using a BR tag, which is basically a line break. So if I refresh that, it's gone down to the next line. I just put another one in there, refresh that again, and it's dropped down. I mean, that looks quite nice. So if you notice this image, it's not a hyperlink, and this is, we can also combine things, right? So if I take my anchor tag and surround my image tag with the anchor tag, remembering to close the anchor tag, and then save, reload, you can see that this image has now turned into a link. If I click on it, I go to the link address as before. So maybe the format isn't as clear here. Let me just make this a little bit wider like this, because kind of word wrap prevents us from seeing this properly. I would tend to indent it like this, so it's very easy to read. So you're opening the tag and closing the tag like this. Probably put this on a new line. So that's the basics of creating an anchor tag, creating an image tag, and also combining the two, which is pretty cool. One thing to note about the image tag is you would normally expect it to close like this. Oops. Oh, I've got an extra A there. Close that. If you would normally expect to have that close the image tag. The image tag is one of those exceptions in HTML for historical reasons, that it doesn't close like a lot of other tags. It simply, that is considered the end. Okay, so that's a very simple demonstration of how to use anchors and images in HTML. Let's move on to the next section. Line break, we've covered the line break. I'm going to introduce horizontal rule, which is basically a line, kind of a separator line that will separate chunks of a web page to make it nice and look good. So this is done via the horizontal rule tag. And save that, refresh. So we've got our horizontal rule. One thing to note, that I can do this. I can open and close the tag and it will still display it. But a horizontal rule tag is never going to have any content within it. It's simply a kind of a separator for the web page. So this is the shorthand where you're basically opening and closing the tag in one go, and that is the shorthand that you would use. Read this as open the HR tag and close it in one shorthand go, if you like. Okay, let's move on. So another useful tag to note is the div and span tags. So the div tag defines a division, and a span tag defines a small bit of content. So the key difference, so let's create a div here. Open the div, close the div. I'm just going to put a paragraph in here. Hello. This is some content. There's my P, save, fresh. So there's my content displayed. Now I don't have to surround it with P in this instance, and it should yield the same result. Although it's gone up a little bit, probably there's a bit of padding going on there, but essentially you can use the div tag to separate chunks of content. The span tag is very similar, however, it's not going to create a line break between the two. So if I create another div here, if I remove the paragraph, because that will create a line break. So the key difference between div and a span is basically one will have a line break and one won't. This is some more content. Save that, refresh the page. So we've got our content here. If I now convert these into a span tag, then they should be on the same line. Yes, they are. So that's the basic difference, and the span tag is very useful for when you're doing styling. If you wanted to style a particular section within a div, for example, is very handy. A span will basically have no influence on how that content is displayed. I think that's probably the best way to think about it. Okay, so change that back to a div. We're going to cover the list tag. So there's two versions. There's a unordered list, which is abbreviated to UL, and an ordered list, which is abbreviated to OL. So I'll show you how that's done. So you might have a set of features within your website that you might want to showcase. So if you're selling a product, for example, you might want to list the features of that product, list the key selling points. So, you know, this is a very simple way of doing that. So amazing product, great price, whatever, buy now. So if I save that, so again, we've got the structure: opening the unordered list tag, closing the unordered list tag. Note the indentation to make it very easy to read. And the li basically means a list item. So open the li, got our content, close the li, and list things that way. So again, if I refresh that, then I've got my list down here, and the unordered list comes up as bullet points. Now, if I change this to an OL, which is an ordered list, then that should change them to numbers. So that's the basic introduction to ordered and unordered lists. Let's continue. The pre-tag. So the pre-tag is basically to mark up pre-formatted text. I tend to use this, for example, in my blog this is actually using a pre-tag to showcase source code. So this is enclosed in pre, so is this. So it's just a different way to displaying it. It's very handy for things like footers, because it will just display it a little bit differently. It looks quite cool. You can see there that's what it would look like. Okay, let's have a look. So let's go through kind of bringing that whole example together. So that was just a demonstration. That was kind of the playground, just messing around. So if I just delete all that, and I'm going to copy and paste the code from this example, which brings everything that we've learned so far together. So I'm just going to take that code and pop it in here, save it, and refresh it. Then this is kind of I like skateboarding. That's one of my hobbies. So to demonstrate the point, I've got this kind of imaginary website which is called retroskater.com, and it's all about a 70s cruiser skateboard. So I've just mocked up this web page just to demonstrate everything we've learned in this tutorial. We've got a header, and we've got a subheader, we've got a brief description, we've got a couple of images there, we've got a few line rules, we've got a hyperlink, we've got bullet points with some additional details. This web page is looking very, very bland at the moment, and the reason is there's absolutely no styling applied to it. It's pure content, and we'll be covering how to make your web pages look cool in a future tutorial. But for now, I'm just going to quickly run through the key points in this web page. So again, if I just make this reasonably wide so I don't get the word wrapping, remember that it's always going to be the same. We start with HTML, we end with HTML. Everything's indented to make it easy to read. The head is going to provide us metadata or data about the actual document. We've got a body tag, open a body tag, close the body tag. We've got our h1 tag, which is the header, which is displayed here in big text. We've got a subheader using h2. We've got a div, which describes the skateboard and has a few image tags, followed by another div, and then a horizontal rule, our unordered list, and a hyperlink at the end, with our copyright surrounded in the pre-text, in the pre-tag. So that's the basics of this web page, and bringing it all together. HTML defines a lot of tags, but these are really the basics to get you started. Yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and got an overview of the most common HTML tags, understood the content, and how everything fits together, and got the gist of saving, loading a web page in your browser, refreshing and seeing the results. Do check out the blog post. There's a few fun exercises to do. Actually, before I go, I'm just going to show you how to use CodePen. So a lot of my examples on my blog are created in CodePen. CodePen is this really cool tool that you can use to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, basically all the front-end web development technologies to create great web pages. So in this case, I'm just working with HTML. So if you go to my blog and click through to the CodePen, it's basically a playground. So you can just mess around and you can change things, like for example, hi there, and it will actually make those changes on the fly for you as you code. You can, if you create an account on CodePen, you can also fork it, which means take a copy and start messing around with it yourself and create your own copy. So I've got no affiliation with CodePen. It's just a great service, and I use it to demonstrate a lot of my tutorials. So if you're reading one of my blog posts and you see edit on CodePen, click through, have a play. There's a few exercises on the blog post as well. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. In the next video, we'll be covering what I've called the secret most programmers won't tell you. So that will really bring to light kind of quicker ways of doing things, more efficient, and how to basically I'm going to be covering more the process, how to learn, and how to really speed that up, because it's all about just being really efficient with what you're doing. There's no point reading tons and tons of theory. So yeah, check out the next video and the next blog. Be sure to subscribe and check out the exercises in the blog post. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.